Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us on our last episode of CDF management in Zambia. The particular episode tries to bring about what or some of the issues that were highlighted in the baseline study that was conducted by the Alliance for Community Action (ACA) in Milanzi and Mazabuka constituencies. Now, one of the issues that was highlighted or were highlighted in that baseline study has to do with the role of the media in ensuring that there is accurate information to intended CDF beneficiaries around the policy itself. This episode or all the discussions have been brought to you by the Alliance for Community Action and its partners. And so I'll be joined by a veteran journalist, Fred Sianyuka, who works at Jugundi Radio in Monze. I'll also be joined by Shen Chipulu, who works at Mazabuka Community Radio here in Southern Province. I'm just waiting for them to join, but please be part of the conversation also. So I'm just waiting for my guest to join in, and we will start the program. But basically, we are just highlighting the role of the media in terms of how can they bridge in the observed lack of information in as far as constituency development fund is concerned. But we'll be also glad if you can get into the comment section. We hear from you in terms of what you have observed with regards the ongoing implementation of the constituency development fund. By now, obviously, every one of us knows how much has been projected to be allocated per constituency in terms of the constituency development fund disbursement. Okay, so I do have my first guest for this evening's episode, which is discussing the role of the media, and this is my very good elder brother, Fred Sianyuga. He works at Juguni Community Radio here in the southern region of the country in Monze district. Thank you so much, Ferdinand, for joining us. It's a pleasure to be with you on this episode. How is our lovely village? Chikun is not a village though. I refer to it as a township, rural township.
Good evening, Muba. Thank you so much. Yeah, Monza is
Lovely.
okay and Chikun is fine.
All right, lovely. Well, we are talking about the role of the media in as far as the implementation or management of constituency development fund is concerned. But tell us, how has been the implementation of CDF so far, even before we talk about the media in your area? What are your observations, the successes and maybe the challenges that you've observed?
Well, it's twofold. There are successes in some areas, and there are also challenges in some areas. And basically, this is based on the information that we gather from the communities. In some areas, you find people are saying CDF is really doing something. In some areas, they will always complain to say we're not seeing any development taking place. So it's kind of 50-50 at the moment. I think following the increase of the fund, from 1.6 to 25.7, then 28.3, and now 30.6 for 2024. So what we saw is when these funds were just increased, I think in 2022, councillors, members of parliament were so much on the ground just to ensure that these funds are utilized. But then as we move, what we've observed is that there's some form of reluctance. We don't hear so much about CDF at the moment, and that's why I said maybe it's kind of twofold at the moment. Yeah, you hear of some success in some areas, you hear of challenges in another area. So basically, that's what we've gathered on the ground at the moment.
That's a very good observation there. But then, when you look at some of the uptake, and I'm referring to some of the components or the components around CDF, we have the youth and women empowerment, the skills bursaries, as well as community projects. In terms of community projects, what key projects do you think CDF has addressed in Chikuni?
For community projects, I think most of the funds have gone towards either construction or rehabilitation of school infrastructure. I think we've seen that area work more, especially for Monze Central, because Chikuni is under Monze Central constituency. So we've seen a lot of money going towards either a new classroom block being erected or a rehabilitation of maybe a classroom that has been in a bad state for some time. I do know also that maybe in the rural wards of Monza Central, there's a challenge of water. So that's another component that has, the CDF has tried to address, though not so much. I personally feel, I think in the area of improving the water situation in rural areas still remains a challenge, despite these funds, the CDF funds being increased. Of course, we've seen classrooms.
Well, we seem to have lost our guest, but we hope that he could join us. So basically, he was highlighting some of the key areas where the Constituency Development Fund has supported in Monza Central, is specifically in Chikuni, where he is based. I will also be joined by Shen Chipulu, who is another media practitioner at Mazabuka FM in Mazabuka. So Mazabuka is one of the is part of the two constituencies where the Alliance for Community Action has has done a baseline study in terms of management of CDF in Zambia. And part of what we're discussing today is what was also highlighted in the baseline study. So I will be very glad to have Shen Chipulu later on, but Fred seems to be facing internet challenge. I hope that it can be rectified so that he joins us back. Let me try to reconnect him so that we can continue with the rest of the conversation. Good to have you back, Fred. I reckon it's internet issues, but you were just concluding in terms of your overall observations around uptake of CDF in Monza Central.
I was talking about our observation based on information we've received and also having gone on the ground. So in terms of community projects, I was actually saying we've seen a number of classroom blocks being built, and also in some wards we've seen improvement in terms of the water reticulation systems, the sinking in of boreholes in areas where water is a challenge. But in the area of the building of classrooms and the like, I think this has not really, it has not received so much appreciation from the community, in the sense, that's my observation, in the sense that maybe it doesn't really have an immediate impact on the community. But in a place where maybe they have been lacking water for some time, the moment they have a borehole, you know that they will have access to safe and clean water. So that you would receive a lot of maybe positive feedback to say, okay, right now we never used to have clean water, but because of this borehole that has been sunk or drilled, we have easy access to safe and clean water. So those are some of the disparities that are there in terms of how the community is appreciating the utilization and probably the impact that CDF is making on the community.
I mean, I know Chukun Community Radio is one that is that has been doing various programming in terms of different programs around various government policies and issues affecting the community. But in this case, where, and I want to refer to the baseline study that was conducted by the Alliance for Community Action in Mazabuka and Milanzi, which established the need for the media then to also have a role that amplifies the aspect of information dissemination. How has the media in the southern part of the country, and Mazabuka is representing other parts of the country, so how has the media interpreted the CDF information, and how have we then disseminated this very information to the intended beneficiaries? Do you think we've done a good job in as far as informing the public accurately about CDF information?
Uh, it's a tricky one, but not so much. I personally feel upon the increase of the CDF allocation per constituents from 1.6 million kwacha in the previous administration, then to 25.7 under the current administration, and then they moved to 28.3 and now 30.6 million. At the first increase, I think the media was so excited about this, so much that there was a CDF story almost every day in the newsroom. That was in 2022. But then what we observed is that as we kept on moving, maybe it became kind of business as usual. We got used to CDF being increased, and we had stories every day such that we couldn't think of any other way of doing these stories. So 2022, the media, I think we did a number of stories around CDF, the increase and the allocations of these funds to various wards, various projects, be it community project, be it youth or women empowerment, be it funds allocated towards secondary bursary or skills development. So we had a number of stories that were written around that, more especially in 2022. But then we saw a downward trend in 2023, and even right now in 2024. The media has kind of relaxed in a way. We don't hear so much about CDF right now. Sometimes you'll have in the newsroom maybe 2 3 weeks there's no story around CDF. More so maybe because Southern Province now, with the hunger that has come in, most of the newsrooms now there's a shift. There's more talk about the hunger. If you hear CDF now, it will maybe the local authority proposing that they channel maybe some of the CDF funds towards maybe an irrigation system to tackle the hunger situation. We have not written so much or not talked so much about community projects, be it maybe the building of maternity annexes, building of staff houses, whether at a school or at a health facility. There's kind of some silence. It's quiet in that area, especially this year, 2024. I think there isn't much around CDF.
But then,
In a
do you
way,
think?
I would attribute this also not only to the media being reluctant, but maybe also the local authorities that are handling these funds. I think they have not been very proactive, just to ensure that they continue to create vibe around the funds that they receive. If I'm not mistaken, I stand to be corrected. I know that under the CDF guidelines, there is the money or funds allocated towards the publicity. Publicity around the CDF utilization. There's supposed to be a weekly radio or maybe TV program, whichever way the local authority would decide, to try and talk about the issue of CDF. But what you will notice is that if not all, the local authorities. In 2022, they did a few radio programs. 2023, a few radio programs, and then they've gone quiet. So from that aspect, also you'd want to say, okay, if the people that are receiving these funds are not that proactive, despite having an allocation that they need to go on radio and talk about these things, what would do excite a journalist to go and write about CDF and not write maybe a political story? So I feel in trying to balance, the local authority also has failed in that area of ensuring that there is a lot of publicity. Uh, and I think my words can be vindicated. I think we've had a number of statements coming from the top officers in government to say the public relations office under the local authority, I think they need to wake up in a way and just ensure that that vibe that was there at the first time when CDF was increased, it should still be there right now. Very few radio stations or media houses have hosted the beneficiaries of these CDF funds. It can be youth or women empowerment. Very few radio stations have had such. So the local authority, in a way, has failed to, bring those people that have benefited from these funds, let them speak for themselves, and just explain how these funds have helped them to improve their lives when they got the funds, what has changed in their lives. So there hasn't been that linkage between the media and also the local authority. Mind you, Mova, we need to understand that to host these shows or programs around CDF, it comes at a cost. But then if there's an allocation under the CDF, that the local authority should be able to release funds and have these radio programs, radio stations will not just take it upon themselves to go in the field and gather this information. So it's a twofold thing. The media relaxed. There's also reluctance from the side of the local authority.
Do you
Out,
think
out, do.
do you think that the
Mhm.
media understand the content of CDF, and in this case I'm referring to the guidelines and the CDF Act itself? Do you think we have a full understanding also, or maybe sometimes lack of information, even amongst media houses, could be a contributing factor to these sort of um, gap in terms of effectively communicating information around Continuous Development Fund?
Uh, I would say majority, they don't understand. The reading culture also, amongst us journalists is quite poor this time around. We don't read, we rarely research. But suffice to say, what I expected personally was that at the time of increasing these funds and also the local government, trying to engage the media around CDF, I personally felt there was need maybe for sensitization meetings, or whether you can call them workshops or trainings, where each province, for example, you draw the media together. If you're Southern Province, guys, can we convene? And then the government there and then outlines at the local government level, outlines how they believe they can work with the media in disseminating information. But these pronouncements are made, then there's no engagement with the media. The pronouncement is made and it just ends there, and the government just believes or feels, okay, the media will take it. But then how many people understand what exactly government is trying to achieve? But this is for me, this is a decentralization policy. But then, how many journalists, how many radio producers or presenters understand what really government is trying to achieve? So there's a gap in that area. There hasn't been so much media engagement, especially away from Lusaka. In most cases, you maybe you'd see these meetings in Lusaka, but then Zambia is bigger. Zambia is not just Lusaka. There are journalists in all the 10 provinces of Zambia. But has government ever convened a meeting of media practitioners or journalists just to talk about CDF and how the media houses can help government to disseminate information? I've not heard of any meeting here in Southern Province convened by government bringing journalists together and just talk about CDF, especially under the current administration. The UPND administration, their flagship program is CDF. That's their focus of, that's their area of focus. But then these pronouncements are just made. The government, in a way, is trying to work in isolation. So there was supposed to be a deliberate policy where government deliberately engages the media, call for whether it's a 1 day meeting, a 2 day, or a 5 days meeting, and just talk with the media. Ask how best this information can be done. Right now, we are supposed to have documentaries, reports around how the CDF has worked, whether positively or negatively. But this has not been done. The government, I don't know, in a way, they just believe, okay, things will work out. Yeah, but where you've not invested, it's difficult to really get the results, and that's where in some areas you find the community complaining to say, yes, we are hearing about CDF being increased, but we haven't really seen the results because there isn't that engagement. There's need to to have a lot of publicity around CDF, how it has worked. Because even the stories that we've done as media houses, most of the media houses, there have been stories just that are done just on the surface. Maybe so much money has been allocated towards this project, it ends there. The media has not really followed to see, okay, has this money really been used where it was allocated? Is the community happy with the quality of works that were done? That aspect has not been touched, and we are looking at 3 years down the line from the time the CDF has been increased. 2022, 2023, and this is 2024. So almost 3 years, but that area has not been tackled. Why? Because there isn't that engagement. There's a disconnection between the media and the local authorities. Despite the funds being allocated that there should be a 1 hour weekly radio program. I think the CDF guidelines I saw myself, unless they've changed now. But the last time I checked on the CDF guidelines, there was an allocation that the local authority should have a radio program every week, 1 hour, at least. Then that way maybe things would have been different.
Fred, I mean, one would also argue on the other side that the much talked about access to information is in place now, and obviously it's a challenge to the media that they should also go an extra mile in terms of accessing information and giving accurate. I mean, you and I know very well that now we have a report of the Auditor General, an opportunity for the media then to sort of get accurate information and see how best they will be able to go through. And I remember last year, the Office of the Auditor General released a report under CDF that found a lot of councils, including our council here in Livingston, was found wanting. Several councils in the province actually were found wanting. Now, do you think we as media, to some extent, are being lazy, or are just want to be given information, but we to some extent are not utilizing the opportunity that we have. Like I said, we've been crying for the access to information, which of course whose implementation is also not yet fully rolled out. But here is an assurance of access to information. How are we utilizing it?
Wow. uh, what you would observe more, is that over time, I don't know, this is me. I personally feel the media has not done much. Maybe also the issues, of infiltration of who can do this, who can do what. Uh, we still need a lot of maybe refresher courses in a way to remind media practitioners, journalists of what they're supposed to do. Three-quarters of the times we report on the surface. We've never gone underground to really see what is there. It's just a matter of the local authority maybe issues a statement and says, okay, we've allocated so much towards this project, and then a journalist picks that story and they write it just based on the information that they've received. That's why I said, in a way, maybe government through local government, because that's where these funds are being dispersed. There was need for engagement with the media. If government is saying the new Dawn administration, they are saying they want to decentralize. The president says, okay, we are moving these funds from Lusaka, we are bringing them to your towns or constituencies because we are seeing a lot of corruption in Lusaka. But then the mindset of the people is not so different from Lusaka and where we are. These funds, at some point, they will be abused, you know. But how many journalists are capable of really going underground, digging information and just show whether these funds are really being used for the intended purposes? If they say we are allocating 350,000 kwacha towards the building of a 1 by 3 classroom block, has the contractor done the works that should be done on the project or on that particular uh, structure? So that area is missing. I think there's need for journalists to be reminded. We need more refresher courses, we need more engagements. But in most cases, we we owe the community so much as journalists. The media houses owe the community so much. Because in most cases, we've just been reporting on the surface. Not so many journalists can do in-depth or investigative, reporting. Not so many. You can count, like across the country, you can count. Even in Southern Province, how many are able to do investigative journalism or investigative reporting? There are very few. So there's need for that continuous engagement between maybe the local government and the media houses, just to increase publicity around the CDF. In this regard, could be just reporting on what is there and following up where there are areas of concern. If the committee says, okay, we feel this project, the money that was allocated was not enough. And over the such stories, for example, even in Chikuni here, there was an allocation of money at some point, which was CDF money towards the light grading of the road, and then the local authority was tell you, okay, we've allocated for example, maybe 100,000 kwacha towards the light grading of this road, and this is CDF money. But then the community are people that are intelligent. They will look at the works and they tell, no, I don't think they used 100,000 kwacha on this project. If you use so much money on this project, probably it should be maybe 50,000 kwacha or 40,000 kwacha. So we need to reach that area. We need to reach that point where journalists undergo, refresher courses, just reminded of what exactly is supposed to be done. But in most of the cases, we report on the surface, and even with the coming in of the access to information below, it's not yet active at the moment. You know that it's not yet active at the moment. But then also, some journalists are still are still afraid to go into these offices, even with this law. So there's a lot really that needs to be done. If government, for example, they've actualized now this access to information law, have has the media been engaged? Has there been any proper explanation to me to say we've actualized this law because we believe there has been this hindrance, and with the law now being actualized, you'll be able to do your works without challenges. But three-quarters of the times, journalists, media houses, we basically just report what we see on the surface. And that's why you find maybe most of our stories will just be, she said, he said. Because see, we haven't researched. We can't bring out so much. But I'll tell you that, Mova, there's a lot that is going on around CDF. There's a lot of anomalies that are surrounding the utilization of CDF. Especially one of the areas of concern is the area of skills development. I think these stories are in public domain where you hear of students allegedly are taken to this particular school. When you go there, you find that maybe this particular institution is not offering some of the skills training that they put on their advertisements. But then the local authorities are paying these monies. Not so long ago, I was in Lumbo during the filing in of nominations for the Gwembe constituency by elections. And I met a senior government official there who, in confidence, said, look, there are anomalies. The anomalies are there. You know, Councillors are conniving with these, skills training institutions where these councillors will get the application forms, and advertise in their words that youths should go to this particular school, and then they get kickbacks. All these are stories, but then they're not being reported. We recently saw I think one member of parliament, I beg to be corrected, who withdrew some students in Lusaka from a named institution because the conditions there are not, the environment is not conducive for the learners. But these are things that are happening, and these institutions are receiving money. So you can imagine how much money is being lost through shady deals that are cut between the civic leaders and these training institutions. So there's a lot really that has to be done. The media has gone to sleep. The local authorities, for me, they are still sleeping. And until both parties are awakened, corruption or misuse of these funds will continue. And as the funds are being increased, more funds again will be abused. That's my take, really.
Fred, thank you so much for finding time to appear on the program, and we're looking forward to engaging you whenever there is a similar topic of discussion.
Thank you so much, Muma.
You're welcome. Yeah, but I've been talking to Ferdinand Sianyuga, who is a journalist based in Monze, specifically working at Jukun Community Radio, giving us insights on how the media can be vital to the management of the Constituency Development Fund. He has highlighted on what the gaps currently exist and how best the media should mitigate the existing gaps to ensure that there is accurate information around Constituency Development Fund, and of course, most importantly, the need for continuous demand of social accountability. On this platform, we've made it very clear that CDF is public money, and it is managed by the law. So hence, the demand for social accountability needs implementation is appropriate. I was supposed to also be joined by Shen Chipulu, who is a journalist in Mazabuka, working at Mazabuka Community Radio Station, but seems he is not making it to the program. But just like I indicated earlier, that this is our last episode, and in our last episode, we were looking at the role that the media can play, and this is basically part of the baseline study that was conducted by Alliance for Community Action in Mazabuka as well as Milanzi constituencies, which are based here in Southern Province and on the eastern part of the country, respectively. Now, if you have not read or if you've not come across the baseline study that was conducted by the ACA, maybe being the last episode, let me just try to endeavor read the document. Now, the baseline study was conducted using a mixed methods approach, including focus group discussions and key informant interviews. In the focus group discussions, selected groups of people were brought together to respond to a set of CDF questions based on the legal and policy framework and to extract from their understanding of the fund and how it was functioning or performing. Now, this method served to solicit participants' attitudes and perceptions, knowledge and experiences and practices as experienced and or observed from their point of view. The key informant interviews were the last data collection points using the face-to-face interviews approach to collect first-hand information on how the fund was performing from the perspective of duty bearers, on other key role players, community stakeholders, and the media, which is basically what we've just highlighted. Now, the information collected from duty bearers was compared to citizens and other stakeholders' views. Following the baseline, it was deduced that while the contexts were broadly similar, each constituency had some unique features which would make specific social accountability approaches effective. The baseline study concluded that following the capacity building for conceptual and technical understanding, social audits would be the most suitable main social accountability intervention for the Milanzi constituency, which is in the eastern part of the country. This was informed by the fact that local communities, ward development committees, and traditional leadership usually have access to project lists, scopes of work, and documents such as bills of quantities which are necessary for the implementation of social audits. The Council, for its part, understands the release of information as a duty. The Alliance for Community Action found the situation to be unique in Milanzi, not having been found in any previous work. Milanzi can therefore be a good pilot for learning about the efficacy of social audits in improving citizen benefit from public funds, as well as the importance of information flow. Now, in Mazabuka, which is here in the Southern Province, that is Mazabuka Central Constituency, the proposal was that the awareness raising and capacity building in the community, members of the ward committee and the media would be followed by an amplification of interface meetings, citizen scorecard, and citizen advisory boards. It was also found that local radio stations in both constituencies are an existent, reliable, and preferred source of information on CDF by local citizens. Capacitating media houses and identifying media champions for CDF would therefore be an important initial activity. These are some of the issues that Fred just highlighted some minutes ago. The initiative therefore held community and stakeholder social accountability training in CDF in both the Milanzi constituency and Mazabuka Central constituencies as forerunners to subsequent interventions. Key to this training was a service prioritization activity which stresses that there will always be more issues than the money available can address. The duty of citizens, therefore, through the zones, WDCs, and CDF committees was to prioritize those needs that are the most pressing and urgent if the lives of communities are to improve. They must pick projects and initiatives that are likely to have the biggest impact on improving lives. Emerging issues in this baseline study, and that is the effects of presidential directives. The commitment to CDF by the government was very evident, as seen in its constant increment in the national budget allocation, but discontentment surrounds its implementation in terms of centrally prioritized expenditure items, which often take the form of presidential directives. This is as opposed to the spirit of the CDF, which envisages an empowered citizen voice. The main argument against the presidential directives from these projects' beneficiaries was that they tend to be capital-intensive projects or procurements and therefore significantly reduce the amount of money available for citizens to directly expend on their felt needs. The directives to construct palaces for chiefs and procurement of vehicles for the Zambia police were the most cited as not having aligned with the citizens' priorities in both constituencies. During the ACA training, communities consistently listed access to basic clean and safe water, primary and secondary schools, proper roads and employment, and lack of health centers as their most felt needs. Now, the use of electronic government procurement system. The adoption of the electronic government procurement system in Zambia, while enhancing transparency and efficiency in procurement processes, inadvertently marginalizes local contractors, contradicting the ethos of community-driven development under the Constituency Development Fund. The centralized nature of this government procurement system tends to favor larger established firms with greater resources and technological capabilities, often sidelining smaller local contractors who may lack access to the requisite digital infrastructure or expertise. This exclusion undermines the principle of empowering grassroots enterprises and stifles local participation in project implementation, diminishing the potential socio-economic impact within communities targeted by the CDF. Now, to ensure the inclusive and equitable distribution of development opportunities, policymakers must address the barriers hindering local contractors from engaging effectively with these EGP system, thereby aligning procurement practices with the grassroots empowerment objectives of the CDF. One other issue that came into highlight in as far as this baseline study is concerned was the tenure of office of Ward Development Committee, and the study established that expanding on this issue, summarized above, it was the views of the beneficiaries in both Milanzi and Mazabuka Central that 2.5-year tenure of Ward Development Committees within CDF creates challenges for effective management, with a midterm re-election cycle amidst a 5-year electoral period. Continuity is disrupted, necessitating frequent retraining and orientation for incoming committees. This inconsistency, it was argued, undermines project implementation, momentum, and community cohesion, hindering the development goals of the CDF. The disjointed leadership turnover affects planning, execution, and accountability mechanisms, impeding the efficient allocation and utilization of resources for community-driven initiatives, and may hamper overall progress in Zambia's development agenda. This was, if you recall, was our second episode where I featured the Vuyu Ward Development Committee member in Jonathan Mata. He highlighted also this finding. So by and large, you realize that the findings of this study, though particularly based in Milanzi and Mazabuka, the concerns and the findings are very general. They are not so unique to each and every constituency in Zambia. Well, there are quite a lot of issues that were highlighted in this particular study. In case you want to get to details, you can go to the Alliance for Community Action ACA Facebook page. You'll be able to see infographics around this particular baseline study. You can also read it in full by going to the website of the Alliance for Community Action. I guess this is where we conclude our today's episode of discussing CDF management, in particular the demand for social accountability, which was basically a focus area or focus areas that emanated from the baseline study that was conducted in Mazabuka constituency and Milanzi constituency of eastern and southern parts of the country. But by and large, like I have indicated, I don't think the findings are so unique to every constituency. Today was the last episode out of the 4 that we were to have around this particular issue, which is basically making social accountability work through constituency development fund. I want to indicate that the baseline study basically was conducted under a deepening democracy facility project, which is being implemented by the Alliance for Community Action ACA with support from Diaconia, and basically aimed at strengthening the demand for social accountability around the management utilization of the Constituency Development Fund. Thank you so much, and we would love to once again say thank you to the Alliance for Community Action for facilitating this discussion and other discussions that we've had so far. We've had 4 episodes. In case you want to get back to some of the conversations that we've had so far, you're free to go through to the platform that you're following us now. You can learn from episode 1 up to where we are. We've made it very clear on this platform that CDF is your money, CDF is my money. Then it is very appropriate that you and I demand for social accountability, because this is our money. Whenever government is doing any project in the name of CDF, they are not doing us a favor. CDF is governed by law, and so it's important that we demand the proper usage of it